because it can't be diagnosed easily, um, it's not taken seriously. And because it affects so many different systems in the body and so many different parts of the body, um, it's difficult to diagnose or understand. You,
I'm speaking today with Andrew Abrahams, the director of Complicated. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really do appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Honestly, this is a stunning film. Um, it is absolutely heart-wrenching, and just incredibly powerful. What was it that drew you in? How did you come into this?
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying it's a stunning film. I think for me, it was a stunning subject. Um, and I mean, literally stunning. I was stunned that this was happening, that the um, so I think that's how I came into it. I was presented to the subject of the film by someone who had seen another film of mine, something I did about 15 years ago. It's called Under Our Skin, and it's about the Lyme disease controversy, um, the Lyme disease epidemic. And it really touched, that film really touched a chord. It was Oscar shortlisted and just really helped bring about awareness. And the subject for Complicated is somewhat similar. It's a medical condition that's stigmatized, that's unknown, um, where there's like a whole swath of people who are falling through the cracks of the medical system. And in this case, it's not just falling through the cracks of the medical system, but it's also falling through the cracks of the legal system because you've got a complex, invisible illness. And what we're focusing on is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disease, hard to diagnose, um, um, affects all the different systems of the body, so not easy to treat either. Um, and so usually it starts with kids, and when kids like right after puberty and they don't know what's going on, the kids get blamed for malingering or faking it. It's psychological. Parents are desperately trying to help them, taking them to doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist. Uh, and somewhere along the line, they might also get accused, this time of medical child abuse, of over medicalizing, harming their kids. So it's sort of like, one stunning um, reality after another. And so I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea this was happening. And I want to bring this to more mainstream awareness. So that was my goal. Is like this is a awful thing, and it's also a fascinating thing. I'm interested in things that have nuance, that aren't black and white, that you can offer to an audience and they can draw some of their own conclusions. Uh, and this fit the bill. So that's kind of the way it happened. It's sort of a long explanation, but like everything in this film, which is called Complicated, it is complicated, and I think that really drives home the point here is that in our medical system, in our cookie cutter medical system, which allows 15 minutes with the doctor, um, uh, there's no way to address complicated medical issues, complicated or chronic medical issues. And on top of that, it's the same thing in the legal system and in the child protective systems. They see something, the red flag goes off, and then the parent is thrown into a system where that can't deal with complicated cases. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. And I think uh, rich. It's a rich subject. It's something that's relevant right now, especially as the healthcare issues and the sort of like medical malfeasance comes into focus in a lot of ways. And I hope the film makes a difference.
There's a lot to unpack here. Like there's just so many so many things to discuss, but you make this point about the medical system, the legal system, and it's interesting because just to give the benefit of the doubt here, like these systems are in place to help protect children from abusive situations. But what we see is that lack of care. Like you said, that lack of there's this disconnect between really finding out what's going on and well, this is in the system, so push it over here. And
Yeah.
it's incredible. I mean, you have these story after story of families who've been torn apart. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
well,
and I think I don't know if there's a question embedded in that,
well, go ahead.
well, I do have something to say about that that I think is really important. Is that, I brought up the issue of time. That's a big part of it. That these systems that we've created um, don't allow for complexity,
Yeah.
don't allow for complicated cases, and so all throughout this film, I was like, I'm spending a lot of time with these families, um, hours at end for interviews, and then I come back. It took us it was like 7 years, and so I'm just like, I'm wanting to like bang on doors and like scream and like, you're not seeing this, and they're not seeing it because they're not spending the time.
Yeah.
I am, and so I see it. Like nobody's pulling the rug over my head, over my eyes. Um, I can see it, but they can't. And so, even if they have the best intentions of protecting children, helping children in the medical system, um, it's a community that's falling through the cracks, and something has to be done about it. And so, someone who has spent time, um, an objective observer, like I didn't come in as an apologist, as a, as a promotional, it's not promotional filmmaking. Um, I came in as an investigator, and this is what I uncovered. So it's really one big aspect of this is time. And unfortunately, we don't have the bandwidth in the systems that we've created that are supposed to be helping us, but instead are hurting.
Well, and you know what, you already spoken about this though, but that was one of the things I want to know was about you because I mean, what an experience. I mean, I won't say stories or who, but you have some of these young people you're working with. I mean, they're dying while you're making this film. Like this, what is an experience like this? How does it affect you as the filmmaker?
Okay, so they weren't necessarily dying as I was making the film.
Okay.
And I think there were surprises for me as well. Like I wasn't expecting a lot of what happened in the film. I wasn't expecting it. It wasn't supposed to happen.
Oh,
um, and so it was a shock. It was a shock for me as well. It was and it's all I can say is it's incredibly heartbreaking, because these are people that you've come to know and care about and um, respect, and see them, trying, like doing their best to thrive and to, to against the odds, get through, against the odds, live their lives. Um, so all I can say is it's just very painful when, and those few times, as you see and say in the film, um, where some of them don't make it.
this is the thing about a documentary like this is that this is reality hitting home. And to watch these families struggle is so difficult. It's so difficult. How is it that we've missed this? In all seriousness, EDS. I mean, I think one of the doctors says 1 out of every 5,000, and they say I think it's 1 out of every 500. That's staggering. That is staggering. That's like if you were to go to a basketball game, that there may be 10 people there that are dealing with it in that crowd. how is it that we these people are suffering and yet we don't have a proper diagnosis?
Well, it's a good question.
Mhm.
This particular illness, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is really a microcosm for all sorts of conditions that are invisible or complex and chronic. It's a whole category that everything that we're saying here can be applied to,
Of course.
but specifically around Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, this has been around for a long time, and there's 13 subtypes, and some of them we have genetic tests for, others we don't. The most common one, hypermobile EDS, we don't have a genetic test, although you'll see in the film that we're working towards it.
Yeah.
Uh, and because of that, because it can't be diagnosed easily, um, it's not taken seriously. And because it affects so many different systems in the body, and so many different parts of the body, um, it's difficult to diagnose or understand. Usually, when that kind of thing happens, they just throw it into the psychological bucket because there's no way that one thing can cause so many different problems. That's the major reason. We just don't know enough. I keep saying this word cookie cutter medicine, but it's true. Like this is not a cookie cutter condition. Um, and as long as we have that mentality, looking at illness or disease in that way, we're we're helpless. We're kind of helpless because more and more as we have like environmental issues come into play, and uh, issues uh, around around what we eat, what's in the environment. This is affecting our health in myriad ways. So we have to be able to sort of like dissect the issue, or in a way that the idea that we've had, the understanding of medicine that we've had is like one illness or one pathogen and one treatment. Um, that's just out the door.
Mhm.
So more and more we're going to have complicated cases, complicated conditions, and we're not going to be able to address them. And that's just the medical side. And then we've got the legal side of what happens when uh, you have parents who are desperately trying to save their kids and do whatever they can. And then somewhere along the line, they get accused of over medicalization or medical child abuse.
I want to say too, the film, as difficult as it is, it ends with some notes of hope.
Hmm.
There is some hope, as you said, and I don't want to give too much away, but it the way the film ends, it's sort of like, oh, maybe we're going in the right direction in some ways. And I would love to hear from you with your conversations with these families. What does hope look like to them? What would bring them hope?
What would bring them hope is having their kid back. I mean, having their kid back, basically. And whether that means alive versus dead, or whether that means healthy, or whether it means healthy versus sick. Um, that's what it means. But in the big picture is really like understanding that this is a major problem. Like it's an epidemic. It's not just, it's not just a few cases here and there. Um, it's happening every day. And so I think the other thing that gives some of these families hope is knowing that their story can make a difference. Sharing their story can also help others. And I know a lot of the people that we filmed felt that way. That one of our subjects, Karen, in the film, she says, this can't happen to another family. Basically, it happened to her, can't happen to anybody else. That would be the best. That's the hope.
Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine. Like, this is the sort of thing that I can only imagine just getting people being aware and looking for it, being open to it. I know I have the Lyme disease is another film that people just pretend isn't there. Um, but I mean, this is another opportunity for people to be heard. And it really is an incredible film. It's really powerful.
Thank you.
What can we do? Is there anything? I mean, we like, I am not a doctor. I am not a lawyer. But I mean, is there anything that can be done from those that are outside the system to help?
One is like, how can we get the film out there? That as a filmmaker, that's what's important to me, is like using the film as a way to catalyze awareness and change. So, you know, that's what I want to do. But the same sort of, like, I'll call it like, the same illness in the system, in the medical system and in the legal system, is also in the entertainment industry, uh, which can't deal with complexity for the most part. So I think that some people might look at the film and like, oh, well, like, what's this film about? Like, is it about this one illness? Is it about, a rare disease? Is it about um, families? Is it about kids? Is it about child abuse? Is like so we don't have the patience with like the onslaught of social media. We don't have the patience. And if you don't have the patience in medicine, and you don't have the patience in the legal system, and you don't have the patience in the entertainment industry, we'll call it, uh, stories like this are going to fall through the cracks too. So, boy, it's like a clarion call for like a change in like, in a complete sort of overhaul, and like slowing down really, and
Yeah.
listening. Uh, that's my hope. Like, I don't know if it's going to happen, but like that's the only way we can do it. Otherwise, we just won't have the bandwidth for any kind of complexity, which is the reality of the world that we live in.
I wish you were wrong. Um, you are not.
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you so much for the time to chat. Honestly, complicated is beautiful. It is heart-wrenching, and like I said, ultimately hopeful. Thank you so much for the time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it as well.